So good morning, everyone. I'm really pleased to see you here for this breakfast briefing this morning, the title of which is Reducing Carbon Whilst Creating Social Value, How to Get Started. So really delighted to have Dr. Greg Lavery and our very own lovely Dr. Carolyn Strong here talking about all of the wonderful things that we've done at Cardiff Business School to reduce carbon. My name is Sarah Lethbridge. I'm the Director of Executive Education and External Relations here at Cardiff Business School. Those are my contact details. Please do get in touch if you've got anything to add about our external relations function. If you're interested in our short courses, please do get in touch. And yes, speech to text captioning is available for this event. So you should find, oh yeah, I can see it dinging in the corner there. You should find that the link's magically available in the chat box. So click that link and it should bring up a window, and then you can follow the captions for everything that's being said in our events. So thanks ever so much for our captioner helping us this morning. A little flag about our future events. On the Tuesday, the 22nd of April, it's an afternoon event. Professor Jakob Torving and Professor Martin Kitchener are going to be talking about the CoGov initiative. So they'll be sharing a recipe for practitioners and some lessons for COVID-19 from leading and managing co-created innovation projects. So again, highly aligned to public value and something to look out for. It should be a really interesting session. On the 6th of May, again, another afternoon session. Professor Alex Bryson from UCL is going to be talking about HRM in the public sector. Does it work? So tune in to find out whether it actually does or not, and the findings of their research. Wednesday, the 19th of May, I'm really excited about this breakfast briefing delivered by Jonathan Hall, who's an external member of the Bank of England Financial Policy Committee. So we're really lucky to have him join us for that session. And he's going to be talking about building financial market resilience. So pretty important, that one. And then Tuesday, the 8th of June, we're offering something free of charge to our executive education community. It's an interactive masterclass to demonstrate the power of Kata, which is an approach to coaching and scientific thinking, bringing scientific thinking into the workplace. So yeah, please do sign up for that one. It should be a really great introduction into what Kata is and how you can get involved. If you've got any suggestions about future events, please do contact John Parry Jones and give us your ideas. We're always looking out for interesting new things that we can share with our business community. Yeah, bit of a flag about our programs. We've got Lean Six Sigma coming up for virtual, of course, delivered by a wonderful Professor Manish Kumar. Such amazing feedback for this program. So please do get in touch if that's of interest. Yellow and green belts offered as part of that accreditation. Really want to make you aware of our Cardiff LBA programme, and we're offering an exciting new pandemic price of £1,600, which is amazing for the amount of content and the contact that you'll have with our wonderful academics at the business school. So really please do share the word about our fantastic leadership programme. It's a great opportunity to network with people from other industries, to have a dip your toe in the water really of some of our professional programs. So yeah, if you're not quite ready to commit to an executive MBA because of work, family, the LBA could be a really good option for you. So again, get in touch if that's something that's going to be of interest. Oh, frog in my throat. Sorry, everyone. If you'd like a bespoke program, we really specialise in those, you know, working with an organisation, finding out what you need, and then we can craft a program just for you. So again, get in touch. We've done a brilliant program with Companies House, lots of programs with law firms helping develop their leadership teams. So please do give us a shout if that's something that's of interest to your organisation. This webinar is being recorded. If you'd like to put any questions to Carolyn or Greg, please post them on the Q&A button. You should be able to see everybody's questions as well, so you can upvote questions that you particularly think are good, and that helps me out when it comes to the question and answer session. And yeah, just, you know, the really great thing about this breakfast briefing, it's an opportunity to tell you a bit more about our wonderful business school. So I just thought I'd remind everybody how good we are as a school. We're currently ranked 6th in terms of our research quality. That was deemed the ranking at the last Research Excellence Framework exercise and joint first for our research environment. So we're an amazing business school, one of only 2 business schools that's ranked in the top 10 of every UK Research Excellence Framework exercise since 1992. We're AACSB and Small Business Charter accredited, and we're a strong, progressively governed school. Lots of different students from all over the world come to study with us. And what's really important to us is that we're the world's first public value business school. So what do we mean by public value? Public value means that we care as much about delivering social value and making the world a better place as we do creating economic value. That's not to say that we don't take our economic value responsibility seriously, of course we do, but really the research that we're interested in is about how corporations can act ethically, responsibly, how we need to focus on reducing carbon, we need to focus on things like disability, discrimination, on the living wage. Basically, a lot of what our research is about is how do we make sure that the world that we're living in becomes better, more progressively governed. So we call this public value. It's what we stand for. And this breakfast briefing is really one of the many different things that we do to try and make sure we, live and breathe public value, and that we don't just talk about it, we actually become it and live it within our business research and our teaching. So it's a really great pleasure to welcome Greg. So Greg is responsible for Rype, and they specialise in, I'm just going to check my notes here, they're a low carbon fit out company. So basically, if you've got a space that you'd like to start thinking about, well, how can we address our carbon footprint? How can we really look at this space and make a difference with it? Greg's your man. And Carolyn's our academic director of estates. And you've made such a massive difference, Carolyn, to our whole approach to our working spaces. So thanks so much for the work that you do. And yeah, I'd like to hand over to you now to share your story about how you're reducing carbon whilst delivering social value. Thanks so much.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. So as Sarah said, I'm Carolyn Strong. I'm actually a lecturer in social and ethical marketing, but I'm also Cardiff Business School's academic director of estates. I work very closely with the Cardiff Business School's facilities team, with the college estates and external designers such as Greg from Rype, Green Screen Flooring and Merthyr Tydfil for the Blind, ensuring that all of our building estates work is not only sustainable, circular economy, but it also employs uses diverse employment practices in all of our projects. So basically, 3 years ago, when we thought about a refurbishment, what this would mean was a skip about where that car's parked, actually, in the photograph. So any refurbishment project would start with removing all of the furniture, all of the flooring, and literally putting it in a skip about where that car's parked. Now, what we started to realise is that we need to change that approach. So what we started to do only 3 years ago is to look at how we can implement our public value social engagement approach in all of our refurbishments. So how did we get started? Well, basically, we got started with the Aberconway staff common room, which, as you can see in this photograph, is quite a dark common room. You can see there's the type of furniture we had there. How this started was, in my role, I requested from management board that we refurbish this common room. They said, yes, you can do it with £5,000. As it happened, Linda, one of the exec team, had met Greg at one of these breakfast briefings, and she introduced Neil, Gareth and the rest of the facilities team and me and myself to Greg. And basically, he helped us look at this common room and work out how we could actually refurbish it for £5,000. So what we started to do, what we did was we looked at the space, we looked at what was in there. We basically reused a lot of the chairs. We just had them cleaned up and sorted out. The chairs we couldn't use, we repurposed. In fact, they are in a sixth form common room in Chepstow. We literally, a member of staff just took them off in her car. So we repurposed everything we could. What we couldn't reuse, we used parts of the furniture. So the outcome of this was a staff common room, which you can see here is a beautiful clean space. It's very bright, it's very collegiate. The table allows for staff to eat together, to socialise together. But you can also see that we have, where we've reused some of the furniture. Now, this project ran out of money. So just to give you an idea of the collaboration of this project, you can see the different paintwork on the wall. Staff actually came in after hours and painted finished the decoration of the room, including our very own Dean, Rachel Ashworth. And so you can see the sort of the passion that went into this room. It wasn't just about furniture. It wasn't just about the space. Everybody wanted to really make the staff common room work. And this was our very first project. The second project I'd like to share with you is our academic staff refurbishments. So basically, we started off with 20 volunteers, academic volunteers, who stepped forward and said, yes, they would like their academic offices refurbished. As you can see, the example on the left is the exact room of the example on the right after the refurbishment. So we had 20 of these offices done. COVID's given me odd dates, but that was summer 2019. We literally got staff to take everything out of their rooms. We stored it, and then they came back at the end of the summer to a beautiful space, as you can see here. The third project I'd like to share with you this morning, and these aren't the only projects, these are just the ones that I think are particularly successful. When Rachel Ashworth became Dean, she inherited this office space. This has historically been the Dean's office space, going back when to the creation of the business school. Basically, Rachel said, I don't really need all of this space. We created a new space for Rachel, which is completely circular economy as well. We worked with Greg on the new Dean's office and the new boardroom. But what we found with this space was we had an amazing opportunity to open up the Dean's office, the Dean's PA's office and the boardroom, and we created this amazing executive education space. Now, this space was finished March 2020. So although it looks beautiful, we haven't actually been able to access it. So as I said, all of this work was done with the help of Rype. So if I hand over to Greg, he can talk you through some of the details of how we actually achieved these amazing refurbishments.
Thanks, Carolyn. A very lovely description, and you've got some great spaces there. Let me start by, I suppose, let me put the designer's hat on and the designer's perspective as to what we did. So our starting point, so that building that we showed in the first slide, this is what its typical floor plate looks like. And you can see lots of very pokey little offices there right around the exterior, and even on the inside, they're a little bit bigger, but they're still pretty pokey. When we started with Carolyn on this, the underlying assumption from the Dean and the department was that this building would need to be knocked down, completely razed, and start again to create a sort of open plan office space, on the assumption that open plan was the right solution. So we started thinking about that and started a conversation to say, well, look, is that actually the right solution? And by the way, let's have a look at what the footprint of a building looks like. So there's this wonderful paper that was done a few years ago now that looks at the greenhouse gas emissions over the entire life cycle of a commercial building, which is also the same as an academic building. And what this did is it said, the research started with, well, what happens right from when you start digging a hole? You put all the foundations in place, you put the columns, the beams, the full building right through to the coffee machines and the use of the air conditioning and everything in there. What does the greenhouse gas footprint look like? Because we like to be fact-based about it. And of course, obviously the footprint's big, so knocking down a building isn't a great thing to do. So any way to save that building's a good idea. But we also started looking at, well, what within the building can we think about in order to make the biggest carbon savings? And the thing that stands out to us is that 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions over the entire life of the building are related to furniture. And that's because, as Carolyn says, on average, every 5 to 10 years, the entire contents of the building, including the flooring, are put in a skip and new stuff is bought. And we don't call it new, we call it high carbon from virgin resources materials, including furniture, flooring, wall finishes, and other things. second takeaway from this that we always find is very impactful with designers is a lot of people, especially interior designers and architects, start with the assumption that, well, most of the greenhouse gas emissions are in the frame and the structure and shell and core. Therefore, if we're doing a refurbishment, there's not much we can influence. Well, this data would show that that's patently untrue, because if you're refurbishing with furniture, flooring, wall finishes, electrical, air conditioning, and therefore impacting a lot of the operational energy through your use of LED lights and various other efficient equipment these days, actually you can impact close to 75% of the greenhouse gas emissions, which is tremendously empowering for all of us who are focused on fit outs as opposed to building new buildings from scratch. It also says that instead of knocking a building down, we can actually save that 19% shell and core by thinking a bit smarter about the building. So what did we do specifically? So you recall these little spaces around the outside. What do you do with a very narrow, tight office that's actually not in trend with current practices around open plan offices? And here's probably the worst example we saw. So this is a 2.5 to 3 meter wide office. They're about 4.5 meters long. And this is what a typical academic would put in it. Carolyn's before shot, I think, was one of the tidier offices we saw. This is pretty typical. It feels claustrophobic. You can hardly fight your way through that. You can imagine a student not being particularly happy to go in and have a conversation with that particular academic. And even the academic will feel a little bit claustrophobic and a bit overwhelmed by the amount of work to do, the horrible yellow walls, and the whole atmosphere feeling pretty cramped. So as designers, the first thing we did is we said, well, what's a better formulation of that office? And what we realized, thinking about the way that the academic body work within most business schools and universities, is there is a lot of time spent on reflection and thought. And then within that retreat space or the office, there are discussions that go on 1-to-1 and 1-to-2 with students talking about new concept, new ideas, especially postgraduate, but also undergraduate as well. So what we did is we started thinking about how you create what we called an office of the future, working with that very tight footprint, recognizing that actually, if you make that a haven for individual thought, you can actually think about that space very differently. And then it becomes a valuable space, right? Because every academic says, I want a wonderful haven where I can go and do my best research thinking. And so this is the sort of formulation we came up with, which on the left-hand side is the sort of, let's say, starting point for that. It's got a simple 1.2 meter sofa with no arms on it because you don't need arms, a round table. Opposite that is a write-on whiteboard or squiggle glass. And I think we arrived, some academics like those, some they don't. A set of book cubes just to create consistency, a ergonomic chair so that there's comfort involved, and a sit-stand desk as well to bring us into the 21st century. And then what we discovered is that moving that around very easily gives us great flexibility, so we can move that into a 2 to 3 person meeting space or a collaborative discussion where all 3 seats are facing that whiteboard. So that work can occur. And obviously every academic has slightly different requirements. So we sort of changed this in consultation with the individual academic. But I think this became, Carolyn, the fallback position for new academics coming in that really didn't know how they were going to work. This became the sort of standard fallback office that we've adopted. The other thing we did from a design perspective is you can look at this and not really get a feel for the space. So what we did is a really simple sort of photo montage mock-up. And I think this had the biggest impact because people went, I get it, right? It feels clean. It feels easy to use. They can see how the space would work because not many people can think in 3D working from a 2D plan. So this is the sort of photo montage we put together. And this sort of really convinced everyone that this was quite a novel and interesting concept. And so we've seen Carolyn's shot of one of the offices that was put together. So using that as a template, let me talk through some of the low carbon and social value aspects of this space, which are obviously hidden from naked eye because we're in the business of creating offices that are incredibly circular and incredibly socially valuable, but that you can't tell the difference. And we think that's really important. If you can tell the difference between an office that is sustainable versus a office filled with high carbon furniture made from virgin resources, we've sort of failed, right? Because there's a quality difference, and that leads to all sorts of problems. So what we do is we remanufacture furniture to as new condition, and we do the same with reclaimed flooring and electronics, etc. So let me talk you through this. So the desk, the sit stand desk, is remanufactured, as is the chair. They've had a past life, although are very high quality chairs, and at the price point that we're able to sell them because they're remanufactured, you would only be able to afford something made in Asia with very poor ergonomics, a very short lifetime, and is probably very ugly. The table frame, that little round table frame, was an hilarious story, because we were dropping off a whole office full of furniture one day, and Carolyn went, "Hang on a minute, we've got a whole canteen full of furniture, Greg. Are you interested?" Because you were redeveloping a space at the time. So we went down, and over an hour or so, we actually popped off, I think there were 22 canteen tables. We popped all the tops off. They were badly damaged, and they were dealt with. But we took the bases back to our workshop, and hey presto, they reappeared in offices with new tops on them, looking fantastic, recolored, and looking as good as new. So that sort of circularity can exist even within the estate of a university. The flooring there, now really interesting story. So there is a community interest company, or KIC, called Greenstream Flooring. The story behind them is quite a lovely one. They started because of an inspirational woman called Ellen Petts, who some of you may have met. She had two problems pressing on her mind. So she lives in the Rhondda Valley. Two problems on her mind. One is that when social housing is allocated in Wales, it comes with no flooring in it. So you have children sitting on bare concrete floors in the middle of winter in the Rhondda Valley, which you can imagine is not a very comfortable experience in a social housing situation where heating is perhaps beyond the means of most households there, especially luxurious heating to heat up a concrete slab floor. So that was one problem. The other problem that really grated on her nerves was that throughout the UK, there are landlords putting flooring in order to sell a space or sell a tenancy. The tenant, before they even step on the floor, go, right, that flooring's got to go. So you get essentially new furniture going in the skip. And she said that's a crime against humanity and against the environment. Can I build a business that will employ, and the third problem, of course, is employment in the Rhondda Valley. So she put those three together and said, right, what I'm going to do is employ long-term unemployed people to reclaim the carpet tiles that are taken out of offices that has good quality carpet that's otherwise going to landfill. And that flooring we're going to put into social housing to give comfort to those in the household. And that model has worked really well for her. And with her, we have helped her to commercialize that into commercial buildings. So her organization, Greenstream Flooring, provides flooring that is sustainable in a number of different ways. So for instance, this has come from a UK manufacturer. She sourced that. But the flooring you saw in the common room, the staff common room that Carolyn showed earlier, that was 100% reclaimed flooring that had come from a couple of different buildings. We put that together into a beautiful design, and obviously you can't tell the difference. And her team did all of that flooring uplift, flooring reclamation and cleaning, and then the flooring installation as they did for these offices as well. So a nice social side of that, and wonderful story there. The sofa you can see on the right side of the diagram there, that was our design. That's a Rype office design. But we work with the Merthyr Tydfil Institute for the Blind, based in obviously Merthyr Tydfil. A wonderful history back to 1923, where 7 blind miners were feeling a bit left out of the community, so they set up the Institute for the Blind. Since then, they've developed a woodworking workshop, and they cater to I think most of their staff have a disability of some sort, not just blindness, but various other disabilities. They've now been going for almost 100 years. And they have their woodworking workshop is serving fantastic furniture companies all around the country for new furniture. But on the other hand, we also said, well, look, can you help us to make some interesting pieces with recycled materials in there? For instance, the fabric on that is 100% recycled polyester made from Chimera. It's very hard wearing and very beautiful. So you can see behind this space is a whole lot of social value. And at face value, it looks like a wonderful office that most academics are very happy to take up. We have, I think, 4 different color palettes. I think there's an autumnal palette with orange and grey, and another color. I think it's a reddy color in there as well. We've got a summer palette, which is sort of a couple of different greens, and the academic staff can choose their colors. And the great thing about the way we've designed it is that everything can be color changed. So those drop-in carpet tiles there, the narrow light blue strip is just a quarter of a tile. We literally cut the carpet tiles into quarters, and those darker blue squares, they could be changed out. So if an academic really hates that color, with 4 or 5 carpet tiles, we can make that change. The sofas can be reupholstered or swapped between rooms because they're not particularly heavy, giving us the ability to completely change this out over time, depending on what the occupant wants. And what a wonderful way to welcome someone to say, here's your office, what color scheme would you like? Here's the options. And then within about an hour, we can make that change happen for them. And how welcoming is that? Welcome to your new office. We will personalize the decor for you, which is simple as 5 carpet tiles and a sofa. Very, very straightforward to do, but a really nice way to minimize the footprint compared with, here's your office, let's rip everything out, throw it in a skip and come up with another one. So that's a sort of little bit of the history about what we've done there. Now, this for us is very much ingrained in what we do. Sarah introduced us as a low carbon fit out company. Every skerrick of an office we care about, including recycled paint, not used in this instance because the painting was done through the university's normal building contractors. But obviously over time, we'd like to move into that area. Recycled lighting, all those sorts of things can be done. The world is a very interesting place in terms of those sorts of materials. And here's some examples. So recycle ceramic tiles, recycle ceiling tiles, recycle paint. And by the way, you don't scrape it off the wall. The statistic is that every household has 7 cans of paint sitting under a sink somewhere or in a cupboard or a shed. What the company Paint 360 do that we work with is they take those pots of paint, recycle those and make very wonderful, good quality mold resistant paints from that. We've talked about green stream flooring. These days, remanufactured raised floorings available, remanufactured electronics, not just laptops, but also screen monitors, keyboards, under desk electronics, all that sort of stuff. AV equipment is available remanufactured by electronics engineers. And even these days, used kitchens are available as well. So there's a lot of products out there that are circular, that can save money, also reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and then thirdly, create a social value benefit in terms of local jobs and community benefits. And we call that the triple bottom line, right? Well, we don't, everyone does in the sustainability world, as you know. So that triple bottom line approach is very much a reality these days, although conventional contractors really don't have a clue about it, and it looks very risky and very uncertain to them. But there are some of us in the industry who are really making change happen with the support of Cardiff Business School and Carolyn's wonderful team. So what does the future hold? Well, we see the world moving beyond just sort of furniture and flooring into all sorts of different materials that we can do in a circular way. And that starts with auditing things properly. Now, obviously, we know exactly what we're putting into Carolyn's building, the Aberconway building, and the other spaces that we're working with Cardiff Business School on. But you really need to know everything, because it's very difficult to think about a new building and the materials that you have unless you know what's there. So that sort of auditing is becoming more and more common, and something we do. Secondly, then designing in the materials and furniture that's available from a building or a site that's being changed, what's available, what's being taken out, what can we then do to that to remanufacture, resize, resurface, reupholster that can be built into the new space. Now, we find a bit of a problem with most architects and interior designers. They don't like to look at old furniture. So if you have a store on your university full of furniture, and most universities, let's face it, have probably 5 or 6 of those, because we've seen many of them often rammed to the gills, often taking up space that the university would like to free up for other things. We go through those stores, find out what's good, what's not so good, and what frankly needs to be moved on to other homes, helping to clear those stores, but also finding that furniture. And our great disappointment is that most interior designers and architects will not go near that furniture because it's all too hard for them, and they don't have the engineering capability to think about how to remanufacture stuff. not on our team. So we employ architects and interior designers who actually will wander into those spaces and say, right, I can do something with that. And just as I gave the example of the 22 canteen tables that Carolyn has, we look at all that furniture as assets rather than just waste waiting to be moved into landfill, which of course is the wrong thing to do. The third aspect of what we see in the future is the ongoing on-site or near-site remanufacturing work by a local team of long-term unemployed people with disabilities. And this is what we do for projects that have a decent duration. I mean, not for a couple of small offices, but for instance, right now we've got a team at Pontypridd in Transport for Wales, wonderful new office that we're providing furniture there for over 500, actually I think it's about 500 staff there in a beautiful new 5-story building. And what we did right at the start of that is we employed a long-term unemployed and disabled team of 5 people to work on that under the guidance and training of one of our project managers. They all live within a bus ride of that, so they can get to work very easily. It's just a really easy thing for them to do. We're not relying on them owning cars, which is unrealistic if you've had a disadvantaged background. And so we think long term, imagine a sort of university-wide reuse system where there is a clear database of everything that's available as assets, a clear view of what the estate's plan's looking like and when things are going to be changed around. And then as furniture comes out and is identified for going elsewhere, that's remanufactured on site by a local team. We think that's the future of what's going on in terms of circular economy fit outs and refurbishments. The benefits are many. So you not only saving money, right? We're all concerned about saving money, but it's not just about saving money. It's also jobs, supporting the local economy, better quality ergonomic furniture than you would otherwise be able to afford, avoided waste, storage space freed up, which can be very valuable if you want that space to be redeployed, and an 80% reduction in carbon emissions as well. So that's sort of the future from what we see to it. So I might just sort of quickly advertise here. If you want to have a chat with us, there's my details. I'll put them in the chat room. Oh, there we are. I've made a typo there. It's obviously Greg at Rype office with the RYPE. There's my mobile phone number. Love to have a chat if you've got any thoughts about that. And please sign up to our newsletter where every month we put out an interesting newsletter with all sorts of aspects of the circular economy and what's going on. We try and make that inspiring to inspire change rather than just advertising, which is obviously a waste of a newsletter. Might hand back to Carolyn to talk about sort of what comes next from the Cardiff Business School side of things.
Thank you very much, Greg. Okay, so basically we haven't let COVID and lockdown stop our plans. We have, going forward and currently we have 3 projects we're working on: the academic office, Remaker space, outdoor spaces. We also have further projects such as the conversion of our library space into a student centre subject to funding. But if I just briefly talk you through the 3 projects we are currently working on. We're continuing with the academic offices. So as I said, in summer 2019, we refurbished 20 academic offices, all volunteers. We had a little bit of resistance from some academics who said, please don't make me clear out my office. I've been in this office for 20 years and I have never thrown anything away. However, as people started to see the amazing results of the office refurbishments, people started coming forward. So we did a further 12 new starter offices, which were all completed January last year. We also have another set of offices that were supposed to be completed Easter last year. We literally have the furniture for those offices, the carpeting for those offices in storage in the Aberconway building, just waiting to be completed. And then obviously we plan on moving into phase 3 of the academic office renovations, which we have a waiting list for. So the project has been incredibly successful, and even to those academics who like to store research papers that they wrote when they were teenagers or early 20s anyway. So the second space we've been working on is what is known as will be known as the Remaker space. So this is a space that's been funded, and basically 2 academics within the business school gained funding to create a Remaker space in the new Spark building. What this will be is a set of workshops that will allow training. It will engage in the community, and it's all about remanufacturing, repair. So when we started this project with Aris and Dan and Andy, we talked to Rype, and we looked at what their requirements were in terms of workbenches, seating, shelving, storage. But because we had time, Romas, one of Greg's team, started to, over time, look for products that could be used in this space. So they found, for example, pieces of wood that they could refurbish. And we started over time to collect the furniture as and when it became available to Rype. This space, again, COVID, I saw in the Aberconway building, there's a bank of sewing machines, there's a bank of 3D printers, all waiting to just get into this amazing, amazing space over in the new Spark building. The third project that we have funding for, which anyone who knows me from the business school is very excited about, are outdoor spaces. So we have, you can see here, 2 garden outdoor spaces. The one at the bottom is the sort of enclosed garden area in Cardiff Business School. What we're looking at is how we can create an outdoor learning and meeting space within under COVID rules, but that can actually be adapted for the future. And we have some really exciting ideas going forward about using remanufactured furniture, using remanufactured fabrics and those sorts of things in these spaces. So, as I said, they're the 3 projects we are actually working on, but we do have a number of projects subject to funding, which hopefully will come to light in the near future, or the long-term future. As long as it happens, we don't really mind. So what can we do together? One of the things that we thought we could get out of meeting everybody today is to sort of think about how can we create an academic estates network? How can we all share ideas? How can we work together to say, so for example, at Cardiff Business School, when we did a refurbishment, we had furniture we needed to repurpose. We started to talk to other people in the college. Some of the furniture went to a library, another one went to a student common room. How do we share all of this furniture, and how do we share our ideas? So what I'd like to suggest is, if you're interested in joining an estates network around education, not just university education, obviously, schools, colleges, any aspect of education really. My email's here on the slides, and I know it will be available. So please do get in touch if you would be interested in sharing ideas, sharing furniture, and basically looking at how we can move this forward together in the future.
Thank you so much, both. I have to say, though, seeing our lovely offices, it makes me so sad, and the exec ed suite behind me. I can't wait to get back to work. I've so had enough of working from home. And what made such a difference about all of the fabulous work that you've done is how collaborative the space feels, and how, I'm a great believer in how your working environment dictates the sort of work that you do. So, I can't wait to get back to work, can't wait to get back to all these lovely spaces, and I'm really excited about what's to come. And this is so important for the business school. A public value mission means everything to us, really. So it's really great to work in an environment which embodies public value. So thanks so much both for everything that you're doing. Okay, let's move to questions. So we've got a question here from TJ. How does this compare financially, Greg?
I'll also ask Carolyn, because Carolyn did the economic comparisons, because obviously she had to do that to satisfy governance rules. We typically find that we're 20 to 30% lower than the cost of doing things with high carbon virgin materials, right? And that's before you factor in the cost of carbon, the cost of disposal, because part of our offer is we will always take back the furniture. We wouldn't be a circular organization if we didn't take that back. So there are savings down the road as well from avoided disposal costs, which due to the landfill tax are quite expensive these days. So we're upfront typically 20 to 30% lower. Carolyn, can you comment on that? Do you recall back when you did the cost comparisons when you were assessing our proposals?
I haven't got the figures to hand, but I can share them. So, for example, with the staff common room, we had £5,000 budget. When I started to look at the cost of carpet flooring, the cost of new furniture, the cost of the overall change, there was no way we were going to do it within £5,000. And to be perfectly honest, the only way we achieved that refurbishment was because we reused, we repurposed, and we as you said, I mean, the flooring itself, I think, was a third cost. Is it about a third less than the new flooring? And to be, we'd love to welcome you all to come and have a look at these spaces, because they really are amazing. And the quality of everything that all of the repurposed flooring and furniture we have, it's like new. You wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah, it was a hilarious story, wasn't it? Because it was almost a dare, wasn't it? Where the estates team said, "Well, look, we dare you to do this for £5,000," and so we sort of took the bit in our teeth and went, right, let's see if we can prove what we can do with the power of the circular economy, and we did, right? So a great experiment, and I think the key lesson there was doing a trial is immensely powerful in terms of proving up the economics, proving the quality, showing what's possible. So we love doing trials.
Okay, great. So a question from Andy Robinson. This is a fantastic example of the circular economy. I guess my question is, how do we scale this? I imagine academia and the public sector account for a lot of the office space in Wales. To what extent is this being adopted more widely? Do you feel positive about the future?
Yeah, Carolyn, did you want to talk about that first?
Sorry, Sarah, could you ask that question again? I was reading the chat. I was reading the questions when you spoke. Sorry.
So basically there's a lot of scope for this. To what extent do we feel the public sector and the government is really looking into this area? Do you feel quite positive about the future?
Yes, absolutely. I think some of the people that I've met through Greg, so example, Public Health Wales, when they had their refurbishment, they used a similar approach that we've used. And the BBC Studios, I understand some of Greg's team were involved in that. I think, that it is open. I think one of the problems is just changing perceptions. So some of the issues we had were people perceived some of the products before they'd even seen them. They thought, well, they can't be a good quality. The carpet can't be up to standard and can't conform to fire regulations and those sorts of things. So I think within the public sector, there are barriers to change from that perspective. But the fact that we've done this, and you can see not just the cost savings, but the carbon savings and the amazing spaces we've created, I think that, the public sector is very open to this.
Yeah, and beyond that, there's some really interesting things going on behind the scenes. So, for instance, the Welsh Government's waste strategy, led by Andy Rees and his team and David, that is very strong on the circular economy, and so you'll see more and more top-down legislation around the circular economy in this sort of respect. The Future Generations Commission, led by Sophie Howe, they're doing some wonderful work behind the scenes looking at procurement, and she has the mandate to essentially do a inquisition on those departments that aren't thinking about their procurement processes, because the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act in 2015 was all about thinking about how to use the government's procurement and other activities to create a better future for Wales. And her job as the Future Generations Commissioner with her team is to really see what can be done around that. So she's really launched a deep investigation into 7 or 8 different departments to say, why aren't you doing anything that's helping the future of Wales, including the circular economy? And the third thing is the National Procurement Service as well. They've just done something quite magical in that they've created, they've just sort of re-tendered, if you like, to look at framework providers. One of those framework providers is the Merthyr Tydfil Institute for the Blind. They have a reserved tender status, which means that if you're a public agency needing to get competitive quotes, if you go through that National Procurement Service and reach out to MTIB, their reserved status means you don't have to get prices from anyone else. It's streamlined the process very well, and we help Merthyr Tydfil Institute for the Blind with the aspects of that contract that they can't do, but they are the lead contractor in those circumstances. So there's some really interesting things there. We've just started discussions with Cardiff Metropolitan University, who've really started to grasp the idea of what's possible, and we're helping them in a whole bunch of different ways, but right at the early stages, thinking about the stocks of furniture they have, creating a couple of trial spaces, those sorts of things. So it's really not that difficult. And what I'm most excited about is Carolyn's, what she just said at the end of her talk there, which is can the academic directors for estates get together, potentially with the estates directors as well, and start to plan ahead a little bit with that idea of an estate-wide asset register, and then the reuse of those assets around the estate to create local employment.
Yeah, thanks.
Can I just add there, Greg, you've also worked with North Wales Police, haven't you?
Yeah, so they contacted as they were moving into their new facility, the what's it called, Eastern Command and Custody Centre. So it's a 500-person police station with all of the special branch, all those sorts of guys, plus a few interesting cells, very progressively designed cells. They started with a circular view because they had a really slim budget and because they wanted to do something for Wales. And then they reached out to the local council in Mould, who were actually exiting an office and were skipping a whole lot of furniture, and said, hey, can we have first dibs on that furniture? So we were able to source a lot of furniture from a local council who was otherwise throwing it out. So it was a really synergistic solution there. And this is happening all over Wales, right? I mentioned Transport for Wales. They're doing it. There's various other organisations. So who did we work with? A couple of housing authorities have done it, and even some private organisations. So Capital Law in Cardiff Bay, very active around the circular economy as well. So it's really catching on beautifully in Wales.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, it's so great to hear. So yeah, it's quite a mature or burgeoningly mature area. Loads of different networks and organisations that you can contact to find out more. Okay, question from Reese. If we're now moving increasingly to a more blended working from home provision, how are we going to ensure that that sustainability element is carried through into our homes? What about working from home and everything that you do, Greg?
Yeah, good question. And the number one thing working from home is comfort, right? And most of us, when we first started working from home, were sitting on a dining room chair, which was often quite hard and comfortable for about 30 minutes. And then the rest of the day you were sort of up stretching, which was really disruptive of our day. So what we suggest is that start with comfort. The way to do that sustainably is to lift up your monitor screen and get yourself a proper chair with arms and full adjustability, as you would have in your normal office, called a task chair. The most sustainable way to do that is to actually reach back to your employer and say, hey, would you mind if I took a chair plus a keyboard plus whatever else you need in terms of kit to get to a ergonomics setup? Take those home with you in your car one evening and set yourself up there. Most employers we've found are very generous about that. They know that their workspaces are changing. So if they have an office set up for 100 staff, typically what they're thinking about right now is reducing that by 30 to 50 desks. And the question for them is, what do they do with the furniture? Well, if staff are putting their hand up and saying, I'd like one of those chairs for my home office, they're giving those away really easily. So there's some really simple, very sustainable solutions that'll lead to better comfort at home as well. And of course, please, there's two things that I'd offer to you. One is we have a blog on the rypeoffice.com blog that talks about how to set yourself up ergonomically, which applies as much to home as an office. So go and have a look at that. Some simple pointers, doesn't need to cost anything to do that. And then secondly, I'd implore you, if you're thinking about furniture and you don't have a source from your existing office, then please think about remanufactured as that solution for you in order to arrive at the most socially and environmentally sustainable outcome there, plus save some money as well.
So a question that came into the chat to the panelists was around primary and secondary schools. How much work have you been doing with primary and secondary schools? And how do you get the tips, if you like, when they are doing refurbishment work and there is a load of sort of furniture suddenly materialising in a skip? How does that work in the school?
Yeah, really good question, Sarah. So what we find actually is Google AdWords and all those conventional marketing things are a massive waste of money, right? What we find is that we rely on our network. And so everyone on this call is now in our network and we're in your network. What happens is people will sit through this sort of a presentation, think, yeah, that's fairly good idea. And then they'll go back to their office and find out that someone's just about to skip a whole lot of furniture and that there's a new office about to be developed at the same time. They typically give us a call and we start a conversation about that. We do design at no cost. So all of that design work you saw for the Aberconway building at Cardiff Business School, we don't charge for that. We build that into our prices. And that means we can start a conversation really quickly about a space with no concern around, or how are we going to pay an architect to come and have a look? None of that nonsense. We try and make things really easy. So that's the easy way to get started. And it depends on people with their eyes opening, saying, this just doesn't feel right. I'm not comfortable skipping that furniture, and I'm not comfortable thinking about a new space that doesn't have a more circular element in it. And by the way, that'll save us money in a budget constrained budget constrained world, where frankly, the money that you spend on furniture would probably be better off spending on educational content and paying the salaries of wonderful educators, including yourselves. So to answer the question about schools, yes, we do schools, mostly though not student seating and student desks. Mostly it's sort of storage, staff, common rooms, staff offices, those sorts of things. That's where we tend to focus within schools. But there is a lot of office furniture goes into those.
So why not the student desks? Is there some sort of
reason? Good question. I mean, what's happened is the student chairs are now a very streamlined plastic version that have basically you can't swing on chairs like you did when you were a kid. Now they've designed them so you can't do that. That is a fairly new concept, and there's not many of those on the second-hand market. So it's very difficult for us to procure those and remanufacture those. Plus also little people, as in primary school students, have much lower desks, and we tend to deal in conventional office-based sort of height desks, which are about 720 centimetres. So dealing for small people's desk is not really in our remit at the moment, although we welcome the chance to have a crack at that in the future.
So what's next for you both? Carolyn, what sort of big ideas have you got? We know the sort of up and coming sort of schedule, hopefully with funding, if we were allowed to do it. But in a sort of big vision, what could you see happening in the school and the university?
Well, I would suggest in the school, we have in the business school library closed over the last year or so, and we have this amazing space that we have the opportunity to create. We have lots of ideas about creating a PhD centre, a student centre. So going forward, we do have although it's very sad that the library closed, and I particularly think that is a very sad, we need to look at it as an opportunity, and we have that huge space which we can convert into so many different ideas, but it will be all student focused, and hopefully we will follow exactly the same pattern with the current refurbishments.
Thanks, Greg. What's new avenues is the business going to go down?
Yeah, I mean, we're excited about the whole refurbishment space, and specifically moving to a net zero carbon position. So we're in the process of setting up a company subsidiary called Net Zero Carbon Interiors, or Netto Interiors for short. We've recognised that furniture, flooring, and the let's call them furnishings, are the tip of the iceberg. We can do exactly the same thing with those big glass panels that go into meeting rooms, meeting room doors, kitchen units. So what we're trying to do is extend what we do into all aspects of offices and spaces. And I mean, Tom's asked a great question, which is, what about hospitals? Absolutely hospitals. I mean, they're essentially, apart from the very expensive medical equipment, which the doctors are going to be worried about anyway, there's a lot of chairs, desks, breakout spaces, and essentially working spaces that look just like an office. That's something we can do very well. In terms of changing floor plans and structures, as a fit out company, we can do that as well. I'm a former structural engineer who's built power stations and all sorts of stuff, so that's really easy to do. And so that sort of, we see the world becoming more than just the linear idea of take resources, shape them into something, and then send them to landfill. We see this circularity as really infecting all sorts of aspects of the built environment, and we're looking forward to being a part of that, because once you've got the basic things in place in terms of the ability to store stuff, the ability to transport stuff so that it doesn't get destroyed, and some resurfacing capabilities, which we have in-house and we're developing with some Innovate UK funding, all of those can be applied across all sorts of physical materials and equipment. So we look forward to pulling that together into a whole package that can help anyone in any circumstance, be it a hospital, a university, an office, or a school.
So thanks so much both. I feel like I need to be a bit like the BBC and say that other circular economy office refit providers are probably available, Greg, but we've just had such a wonderful working relationship with you over the last couple of years. We're so in awe of the work that you do, and we're so proud to be associated with you. So it's been really lovely to hear the story, and thanks so much, Carolyn, for everything that you do for our academics in the business school. You've made such a massive difference in terms of the quality of our working spaces. So thanks so much both. Get in touch with Greg, get in touch with Carolyn. Thanks to everybody who's contributed to chats and Q&A. There's so many, it sounds like there's loads of brilliant public sector, particularly support groups and networks. So please, if you're in the public sector, you don't know about those networks, seek them out. I'm sure you're part of some of them both. And yeah, it's been a year since we've moved our breakfast briefings online. Can you believe it? So this is a year of virtual webinars, and we might mix things up for the next one. Our lovely business manager, Jonathan Parry-Jones, might be the host of the next breakfast briefing. So you might not have to look at me all morning. You'll get to see John Parry-Jones. Well, we'll see how we go, but that's the plan anyway. So it might not be me for the next one. So I hope you tune in for that one, where we've got Jonathan Hall from the Financial Policy Committee from the Bank of England. And thanks so much both, and look forward to seeing all the wonderful things that you do in the business school. Thanks so much.